Joe Fredericks here. This is a quick update before we get into the podcast. This is being recorded on Thursday, December 4th. There are charges coming likely as a result of the fire from Lutsen Resort in February 2024. The podcast you're about to hear is our original reporting. We will update in future episodes following any information from the State Fire Marshal or the Cook County Attorney's Office. Let's jump into the episode.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
I'm at Lutsen Resort, and there is smoke rising out of the ground area, and I have no idea why or how or where it's coming from.
Tyler Cobb was working the front desk at Lutsen Resort on the north shore of Lake Superior, near the small town of Lutsen, Minnesota, on the night of February 5th, 2024.
I sit up, lean over the desk, and I'm like jumping up in my chair, freaking out. And I was like, is that steam? I stand all the way up, I run around the desk area, and then I just see that it's coming through the floorboard. Not an electrical outlet like I've seen some things report. It's coming through the floorboard. Take a big sniff. Open my eyes really wide. I'm like, that's smoke.
I'm going to go outside.
Okay, what can I get your name, sir?
Tyler, I am front desk tonight.
Tyler's mind was frantic as he makes the first call to report the fire. At this point, he doesn't know where the fire is coming from or how bad it is.
Running frantically looking for a fire, getting to the staircase, dialing 911.
He couldn't see much in the chaos and the darkness, though he could see the windows of all 3 floors of the resort near Lake Superior. He tells the dispatcher on the 911 call that the smoke is coming from the ground area, which is near the front desk where he's stationed that night.
When you say ground area, like the beach?
And I remember saying that because I was just immediately thought, I wish it was on the beach. I was like, no, in the building.
Like under light bulbs and under like couches in the lobby.
So it's a full-on fire alarm then?
Yeah, it's going off. I don't know if you can hear it.
Yeah, I can hear it going off.
Like, okay, we'll send somebody there. They're on their way.
After making the initial 911 call, Tyler keeps looking for where the smoke is coming from. Even though it's winter, Tyler's curly hair is glued to his forehead with sweat. The temperature fogs up his glasses, making it all the more difficult to see. All the wood around him seems to creak as he steps back into the building.
It just looks like there's tiny little clouds moving around all inside. And then right as I look inside, just gasping, and then seeing the lights completely just turn off, seeing lights start flickering, and hearing an alarm go off. Never seeing any sprinklers at all go off, which I think's probably a bad thing when there's a fire. And by that time, I get to the other side of the building, looking in through the main lodge door. I can see just orange flailing, looking like everything's just crazy moving around.
Thinking that the situation is getting worse, he calls 911 again.
I'm from Lutsen Resort. I already called it, but now I actually see fire inside the building. I'm outside safe, but I actually see fire now. I just wanted to let y'all know that there actually is now.
Do you have any idea of people in the building?
I am pretty sure that we have no guests tonight.
I know that whenever I picture it, I can still picture, like, basically the smoke rising through the floorboards. Like, I can see in my mind, if I want to, that just still kind of like haunts me, is I never want to feel that warm and like I'm sweating and melting during wintertime again. Because it was February, don't know how cold it was supposed to be, but it felt like I had a fireball in my face and I could feel sweat dripping down my face.
Early in the morning of February 6th, 2024, Lutsen Lodge on Minnesota's north shore of Lake Superior was destroyed by a fire. There were no guests staying at the lodge the night the fire happened, and there were no reports of injuries. There was also no initial word on the cause of the fire. One of the first people that Tyler called moments before the fire completely engulfed Lutsen Lodge and started to destroy the building was the facilities director, Quentin McCorquodale. Quentin was nearby up Ski Hill Road, leading toward Lutsen Mountains, when he got the call. He came immediately.
Whenever I first got there, it was smoke. And I assumed it was like a localized thing, because he said fire, and I had assumed that he had possibly built too large of a fire in the chimney. But then as I saw it progress, my mind immediately went to actually the maintenance work that had been done earlier that day. I was trying to put together where it was coming from. That was my big thing, because there was smoke in multiple locations.
Quentin stood with Tyler and several others, including law enforcement officers and people from volunteer fire departments, as the fire completely engulfed the building. The origins of the resort date back to the late 1800s. It's been a landmark for people visiting the north shore of Lake Superior and Cook County during all different seasons, from skiing at the nearby Lutsen Mountain ski hill to spending summer afternoons skipping rocks on Lake Superior. It's also a place where people came to fish, celebrate anniversaries, and get married. My name's Joe Fredericks. I've been a journalist on Minnesota's North Shore for more than a decade. In Minnesota, the North Shore is largely considered an area from just outside of Duluth all the way up to the Canadian border. The iconic Highway 61 is the only road taking motorists up the coastline of Lake Superior in this stretch of Minnesota. The whole North Shore feels like one small town for most people, though there are different municipalities along the way, including Grand Marais, Lutsen, Tofte, Grand Portage, and Two Harbors, along with places like Silver Bay, Schroeder, and other smaller towns. The area feels isolated geographically to many who come to visit, but there's a strong sense of community among the people who live on the North Shore. I live near Grand Marais, but I spend plenty of time driving on Highway 61 to do things like get my groceries in places like Two Harbors or even Duluth. This whole area is huge, but it all feels like home. The owner of Lutsen Resort, Bryce Campbell, he was a relative newcomer to the community. Bryce is a Canadian who's owned several other lodging institutions in parts of Canada and also on the North Shore, though he doesn't anymore. Bryce purchased Lutsen Resort in 2018. His vision was to make the lodge a bit more high-end. When he arrived to Cook County in the North Shore, he got involved in the local hospitality scene to some degree. At one point, he was the treasurer for Visit Cook County, the robust tourism agency that promotes people coming to the North Shore for vacations. The night of the fire, Bryce said he started getting phone calls around 1 a.m., and he came as soon as he could. Bryce's husband and the general manager at Lutsen Resort had attempted to contact Bryce once they found out about the fire. Bryce arrived hours later. He actually witnessed the flames and saw the resort burning.
Pulling up, just everything looked orange. I just pulled right in. I just went by everyone. I just wasn't going. So I got as far as I could, and then not what you would expect. I've seen a fire in one of our businesses before. I stood there and watched for hours as the fire department was trying to put it out. And when it was done from two sides of the building, you would never know there was a fire. From the other two sides, you would. But,
You mean the other fire, the rest in it?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. I'm asking Bryce these things because as this story unfolds, it's relevant to know who saw who at the scene of the fire and who was where on the night of the fire.
I didn't expect to pull into nothing. It was literally just orange and two chimneys. You saw just burning debris, but you would never. The building was gone already. That's fast.
According to Bryce, his legs gave out, and he stumbled to his knees as he watched the lodge burn. He stayed in that prone position, he said, for quite some time.
It wasn't even that cold because it was a warm winter, but, like 2 days later, I was looking at my knees trying to figure out why. I was like, oh yeah, it's like I just kind of was in the snow, went on the ice for hours, and ended up with like frostbite on my knees.
Did you talk to people when you were there, or like interact with firefighters or law enforcement or people from the resort or anything?
No, told them where I was and figured if anyone would come over they would, but I couldn't. I did not handle it very well, to be honest.
The resort's general manager at the time of the fire, Edward Venegas, was also on scene not long after the first flames were seen erupting from the lodge's windows.
When I arrived, I believe it's 1:05-ish. First responders are there. I think there's a deputy near the steps going up to the front door, and I see flames in the lobby. About 1:30, and you see flames in more than one window, which means now it's in more than one room. Those flames must be reaching from the lobby and the office space into those lodge rooms that are right above the office space on that one wing, that we're losing the whole place.
Is it hot? Can you feel it?
Really, really hot. Very hot. I had jumped in tennis shoes versus, snow boots or something like it. I remember being out there for a half hour or so, realizing that I was standing on very cold pavement with tennis shoes on. I regretted doing that, but you could feel the heat. I mean, you could get sunburn heat off of that building. There's a video that I published on Facebook that was picked up by most of the news agencies. It's a bonfire that is probably 70 to 80 feet tall in terms of its flames, and you're just watching that.
With the flames reaching toward the night sky, some of the fire trucks and other crews arriving found that snow was blocking their way down to the resort. Campbell had given instructions to the maintenance crews not to plow those specific driveways.
This was a Bryce deal. Because we were not renting the cabins and townhomes anymore, that narrow drive that goes up the hill to the townhomes and cabins, he was given direction to maintenance of not to plow it. But those firefighters needed to plow that because they needed to use that driveway for the tanker trucks.
Eventually, someone with what's called a road grader, which is something that smooths out gravel roads but can also work to plow snow and ice from these types of roads, had to come and open up the driveways so that the crews could reach the burning resort.
Just so they could do their work.
Finally, by 6 a.m., Edward realized he'd been there all night. He decided to go home and take a nap. But he didn't sleep for very long.
I think I was back by 7:30, and I stayed most of the day, if not till 5 o'clock or something about there.
By 7 a.m., the morning of the fire, news had started to spread on social media that Lutsen Resort was burning to the ground. A few members of the press, including local media, were there. I was one of them, and I was live on the air with Minnesota Public Radio just after 8 a.m. the morning of the fire. Ash was falling from the sky and literally landing on my boots as I spoke with the correspondent in St. Paul.
The first responders' boots crunching on the gravel. The lodge at Lutsen Resort stood for decades along the Lake Superior shore. It's separate from, but close to, Lutsen Mountain ski area. Journalist Joe Fredericks is the former news director of WTIP Radio in Grand Marais. He is at the scene at Lutsen Resort along Highway 61. Joe, thanks for joining us. I understand the fire was first reported just after midnight and crews remain at the scene. Can you describe what you're seeing now?
There's still flames coming from the building here, one of the main buildings of the property, so the fire is still active. There's 7 fire trucks that I can see right now, and probably 30 or 40 people still on scene. I mean, this is very much an active scene, even though the fire did start around 12:30 a.m. this morning.
Do we know if there were any injuries? Were there people in the building at the time?
The initial reports are no injuries. That's still the latest. And there were no guests that were reported in the building. That's what we have from our local law enforcement here in Cook County. We're not sure. I've been asking other resort owners and other people if Lutsen Resort was open or why there might not have been any guests, and nobody really has any exact information on why it's being reported there were no guests in the building. The Lutsen Resort has been posting as recently as just a day or two ago that, we're open, here's drink specials and that type of thing. They are doing some remodeling. We know in January they've been posting some information about that. So not sure about the connection between why there's no guests, the remodel, or the cause of the fire. It's still obviously, being determined with the active scene, no initial cause. Fire trucks driving by right now, Phil, so sorry for the background noise here.
Yeah.
It's just surreal to see this again.
All right. Joe, thank you so much for reporting for us this morning.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And it's another sad day here on the shore. I mean, there's just, you can feel even now with the fire actively burning that there's just a lot of emotion going on up here today.
All right. Thank you very much. That is journalist Joe Fredericks for us at the scene.
The collective loss of Lutsen Resort was immediate the morning of the fire. Social media posts, media reports, and general conversation about the fire focused on the sadness and the memories that were made and now essentially obliterated by the fire. However, it did not take long before the narrative shifted.
It's called a fraud fire.
One commenter on Minnesota Public Radio News' post on Facebook said,
"It happens when the mortgage and insurance papers rub together very fast."
Another online commenter said,
"We can tell this is insurance fraud. Dead of winter, no guests. He was broke."
Another commenter shared that,
"This is such a nauseating tragedy."
the economy of Minnesota's North Shore relies on tourism. Many of the resorts from Lake Superior to the end of the Gunflint Trail provide lodging for the tourists who come to spend money and vacation in this beautiful outdoor playground. And even though it is a remote area, there's a lot of media attention statewide on the North Shore.
Hi, I'm Brielle Bredston. I'm the business reporter for the Duluth News Tribune.
Brielle covers all kinds of news about the North Shore region, and she does that from Duluth to Carlton, Grand Marais, all the way to Grand Portage. If a new business opens, she's probably going to show up with a photographer and write something about it for the newspaper. When she saw that the fire had happened at Lutsen, her first instinct was to call General Manager Edward Venegas.
I was asking questions about the causation of the fire, like is there a suspected cause? Is there, an estimated damage amount here? And he couldn't provide any of that information. So knowing that hotels are inspected by the state fire marshal, I gave the state fire marshal a call, and they followed up with the Lutsen Lodge failing their fire inspections. Just because, when a fire happens, you don't automatically think that it's a crime, but it could be. So it's you kind of want to know that person's background. And so I had our crime reporter pull Bryce Campbell records, and he found a few from Canada that he couldn't really get into, but he was able to find some lawsuits that were filed within days of the fire from the homeowners association, condo owners. So things that I already had started writing up when the fire marshal's report came out. And I think that kind of turned the direction of honoring the history and memory of the Lutsen Lodge to there's some red flags here.
Brielle had her suspicions, but at that point, they were just suspicions. She wasn't the only one with them, though, because back in Lutsen, a number of employees were starting to ask questions. And those questions turned into theories. And those theories, they spread like wildfire along the North Shore. Quentin McCorquodale, the facilities director at Lutsen, he didn't believe the rumors. He thought that there must be a reasonable explanation.
Whenever the fire initially happened, there were other frontline employees who were saying at the fire, "Oh my God, he actually did it." And I was like, okay, let's cool the dramatics here. We don't actually know if this guy burned down his lodge.
With everyone consumed by the news and the impact of the fire, Quentin worried that by accident, he might have had something to do with it.
In my head, I was scared, like, what if, like, I don't know, maybe the wiring was done wrong by this maintenance guy a contractor I had hired.
It wouldn't be long before fingers started pointing and new narratives started to emerge. Because even as the embers from the fire cooled, this story, the story of what really happened at Lutsen Resort, was just warming up. This podcast was written and produced by me, Joe Fredericks. Story editing by Julie Sensulo. Support for the podcast comes from Kickstarter contributions, courtesy of people like David McDonald, Don McKeever, Chris D. J. White, Connie with a K, Mike Larson, Amy Terrell, Buck Benson, Jim McDonald, and dozens of others. This podcast is also supported by Clover Valley Electric, a family-owned electrical contractor serving Minnesota's North Shore from Duluth to Grand Marais and everywhere in between. Their team handles everything from service and troubleshooting calls to full new builds, underground power and fiber installations, as well as commercial work, including lighting replacements. But whether it's a lakeside cabin or a small business or a large resort property, they bring craftsmanship, safety, and integrity to every job. Clover Valley Electric, built for the North, powered by experience.